the Casio F-91W has sold over 100 million units. The Casio G-Shock in all its forms, another 100 million. This far exceeds the Rolex Submariner, the Omega Moonswatch, and anything else that comes out of Japan, Glashütte, or Switzerland. Casio are the best-selling watch brand of all time, and this is why. Welcome to Doug's Watches, the Thinking Watch channel. Here I like to talk about art, design, history, philosophy, and theory, and how they all relate to the world of watches. And if that sounds good to you, do make sure to like and subscribe. So a word of warning, I am a Casio fanboy. I have quite a few. A 5600 G-Shock, F-91W AE1200, a second AE1200, A168WG, an MTP 1302, and I'm sure I'm forgetting some. I'm as guilty as the next watch collector for a bit of cheap retail watch therapy. So I might have some bias in this matter. But then I reckon you might do as well, because Casio ship nearly $2 billion of watches a year, and they're not all in my watch box. You might even be wearing one while watching this. But without a doubt, if we ignore the Apple Watch at least, the humble Casio is the best-selling watch of all time. But how did they get here? The story of Casio watches starts not in Switzerland or Germany, but in post-war Japan. Casio began as a more general company before becoming a calculator company. They produced these little digital brains first, but in 1974 they took a drastic turn. Casio looked at the humble wristwatch and thought, we can make this smarter, we can make this better. They continued the work of outwatching the Swiss that Seiko started in 1969. Enter the Casiotron. It not only told the time, but also automatically tracked the number of days in each month, so no more fiddling with date wheels. It was futuristic, digital, and was full of pure 70s optimism distilled into stainless steel. Then 2 years later came Casio's first world timer. Suddenly you could see the time in cities all over the globe with just a quick glance. This was back when international travel was still glamorous, and calling someone overseas meant a truly special occasion. Casio made you feel like a jet setter, even if you were just sitting in your bedroom. I made a video recently looking at its successor, the AE1200. Go check that out if you haven't. I promise it's a more interesting video than it sounds. But then came 1983, the big bang moment for the brand, the G-Shock. The story is legendary now. Engineer Kikyo Aibe drops his watch, shatters it, and spends years obsessing over producing an unbreakable watch. The result, a shock-proof, life-proof, world-proof icon. The G-Shock was a revolution. It suited the military, skateboarders, adventurers, astronauts. Everyone wanted one. And over 100 million G-Shocks later, it is clear that he nailed it. Fast forward to today, and Casio's vintage lineup has gone from cheap quartz nostalgia to full-blown fashion statement. The F-91W, the simplest of simple digital watches, has quietly gone on to sell over 100 million units, as we mentioned earlier. It is a true icon. Its design hasn't changed since its 1989 launch, because, quite frankly, it just doesn't need to. The AE1200, Casio Royale, the A168, and other classics now all carry the same retro cool aura that mechanical dive watches and chronographs hold, continuing to drive sales for the brand. So while the Rolex Submariner or Omega Moonwatch might get the glory as the most iconic watches, Casio has sold more than any Swiss brand could have ever dreamt. Over 200 million iconic pieces are out there, beeping, timing lapse, and lighting up tiny green and orange screens all over the world. And that's the story of Casio, but I don't think it fully represents what makes Casio tick, if you pardon the pun. Casio as a wider company is more so a design philosophy, democratized, practical, but always functionally brilliant. That's how they went from calculators to becoming the best-selling watch brand in history. By applying these principles, they produced goods that worked for everyone. The F-91W is a no-frills watch for those in need of the time, the A168WG, an accessible bit of bling. The G-Shock, a dependable field watch. With Casio launching their first watch in 1974, they were actively partaking in the quartz crisis as triggered by Seiko in 1969 with the Astron. However, from the perspective of Casio and Seiko, this was not a crisis, but their moment to revolutionize watches, and that they most certainly did. The original Casio watches were not as cheap as their modern successors by any means. I'm not sure on RRPs, but this is what watch forums and subreddits and the comment section tell me. but their prices would come down to mass market levels over the first few decades of their existence. I found online that the original G-Shock had an RRP of 11,400 yen, about £57 at the time of writing, or $77 for the Americans in the audience. I know there are quite a few of you. And adjusted for inflation, that's $249 today, and that's well within the price range of an affordable watch. But unlike when the first Casios launched, we do now pay a premium for mechanical movements, and this is rather silly if you ask me. They are less accurate than a quartz watch, nowhere near as robust, and often not as waterproof. The quartz watch revolutionized watchmaking for a reason. It is objectively better for many. So say you actually need a watch to tell the time instead of flexing your wealth, stature, and incredible taste, as we tend to do with our exorbitantly priced luxury watches. Well, you're looking for a tool watch, and I'm sorry, but a Casio is just better suited for this than basically any mechanical watch you can actually buy. I've been looking to get a field watch. It's notable that one is missing from my collection, but for some reason pulling the trigger on a Hamilton Khaki Field mechanical 38mm, or a Seiko Alpinist, or even a humble Seiko 5 of some description feels off. And that's because, in reality, it is redundant. If I'm actually going out, actually exploring, doing manual labour, or even just on a photography trip, I'll pick up my G-Shock, because I know it'll be fine. Whereas the Hamilton, I'll have to wind it. The Alpinist worry about scratching it. The 5 get annoyed by how I set the time this morning, and by lunch it's already wrong. And this is why Casio are the best-selling watch brand of all time, because if you actually need a watch, their watches fit the bill every time. And then there is another thing we must consider, and that is the cool, semi-luxury factor, as I like to think of it. There is something unpretentious about Casio. Now that could be because of their utilitarian nature, as after all, I think the same argument could be made for many watches with this tool-like edge. But then the cool factor, I think, comes from the price as well. Every time I've bought a Casio other than my G-Shock, there's been an, let's just get it moment. My G-Shock purchase was different, and that was more thought out as I was still a broke student and couldn't afford such flippant purchases. But the vast majority of the Casio catalogue in terms of price, for many a working adult, is a within reason impulse buy, I believe, even after the recent price increases. I won't lie, I was shocked to see that an A168WG is now twice the price of what I paid for mine. But that is the way of things these past few years. And £60 doesn't sound like much on Watch YouTube. However, for the non-watch indoctrinated, or less well off, it is a considerable purchase. If you're buying an A168WG, I doubt you really need a watch. It's a stylish watch, an accessory, but you probably already have a phone with an even more accurate clock on it. However, I don't think you should feel like a pauper for buying a watch in this price range, and that Casio get right, with nicely branded watches, lovely packaging, and brand recognition. See, this watch, it's a luxury product, even if it isn't a luxury watch, because after all, luxury products are built on heritage, nostalgia, narrative, and image, and Casio have all of these in spades. It's just a very different image, but I'd argue that at this price point, it's only Casio that provide any image. Casio have become the best-selling watch brand ever because they made the best tool watches and the best entry-level mass-market luxury watches for normal people, not us hobbyists. It's all quite simple, really. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, do please like the video. Subscribe if you want to see more of my work, and maybe consider becoming a channel member for a bit more Doug's watches and a couple of other perks as well. It helps me out just that little bit. Till next time, bye-bye.